Hey everyone. Let me just admit everyone here. Can you guys all?
You're cutting in and out.
There we go. Sorry. Um, Apologies for being a little bit late. And for some reason, I have such issues with this Zoom link that I've been provided, and I keep getting a link as an attendee, and I have to register for it. So I don't know what's going on. So I just wanted to apologize for being slightly tardy here. Um, Let me just.
Had to try 3 times, 4 times before I could get connected.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Whatever software, to be honest with you, it's not even worth me trying to figure out. I guess the most important thing is that we're here now, and I have to work with Laura to just understand what is going on. Right, we have 38 participants. How's everybody doing today?
Good. I think everybody has to register when they come on. It's the
Yeah,
way they
but
keep attendance.
not the host. That's the problem. I have a separate link that I have been sent, and for whatever reason, it was in this. I had it in my calendar, and whenever it's either it's not there, and the only link I have is a attendee one. So again, I gotta put it on my to-do list to figure out. Okay, we're up to 40 now.
How many are in the class?
I have no clue if I'm honest with you. I think the thing that would be helpful is to have kind of someone monitoring everyone who comes in, because when I was presenting last week, one of the things I noticed is like it's incredibly disruptive to the presenter when you have like people asking to be admitted. And if I'm speaking, it comes up and it's like, okay, I have to keep admitting people. So we got to figure out just a better way, because I want to make sure everyone is able to participate. So it looks like we're at 40 right now. Because we're 7 minutes behind, I'm just going to start. Let me put up my presentation. One of the things I wanted to share with you guys is I was looking at some of the old work that Mike had presented, and one thing that dawned on me is that some of the presentation slides that he was sharing, they didn't have a lot of, let's just say, meat in them. And what I mean by that is they were great slides to kind of drive the conversation. But I wonder, and you guys will tell me eventually, um, if you guys felt that after the call, you were left with, really substantive takeaways, and things you could kind of refer back to. And one of the things I wanted to do is I'm taking a look at all the materials.
Hello?
Let me share real quick. I'm taking a look at all the materials, and I just want to make sure that you guys have, just good stuff to go back to, right? Because some of the stuff I'll talk, it's great, and then I just don't want it to be missed, right? So a lot of the presentation that you'll see here, it's not intended for me to go slide by side at every single point. Some of it is intended for you to just kind of go back and reflect on. So we can talk about that in the session afterwards. But in the advent of time here, I want to get right to it. So today's session is about cold calling, everybody's favorite topic. And last week when we were, and you guys can see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Last week we were talking about, how do we track leads, right? And there was the question of, sphere of influence. How do we maintain contact with that? And the focus of my presentation last week was new individuals, right? It's one thing to have a sphere of influence. Everybody knows about working that. And obviously we're improving ways in which we can stay in contact and stay relevant. with people in your sphere of influence. But I've always been a big believer that you kind of have to always have an always on lead generation solution, right? Your sphere is only so big. It can grow if you activate it, but you always should be looking to grow it even more, right? And a lot of that comes through cold calling. And I'll tell you this, when I first started in my first job, was not real estate, and someone told me I had a cold call, I literally almost had a panic attack, right? The thought of me having to put myself on the line and be a salesman and getting rejected was just a lot for a young 23-year-old. And it never got any easier as the years went by until I started to realize that, well, one, you know, I'm just like every individual I'm calling, right? Fears, threats, motivations, everything I'm going through. And when someone calls me and asks, if they're soliciting something, I don't necessarily think about that person in a negative light. I probably think about maybe the situation, the time in which they're calling, the fact that I probably don't want to deal with it, and apply that response to it. And so what I mean by that is I started to kind of separate the subjectivity from the objectivity. And they weren't saying no to me, Brandon, you're a bad person. How could you? How dare you? Right? You should feel, shame on you. It was more of like, hey, I get what you're trying to sell me something. Maybe now's not a good time. And if you were able to get into a conversation, maybe what you were selling doesn't resonate with me at this time, or perhaps I just didn't do a good job of actually selling, which is a reality. So one of the things I want you guys, when you think about cold calling, because I believe it is mission critical for any realtor, for any salesman growing their business, is the power of relationship capital, right? And this is a kind of phrase that I've coined here that I think it's important for realtors, right? In building it at the start of a relationship and maintaining it as that relationship moves from a prospect and hopefully into a promoter, right? Which is someone who evangelizes your services and your business, right? So one of the things is like, how do we build these client relationships from scratch, right? None of this is easy. Give me 1 second, just mute people. But it is mission critical that we do it. And when I was looking up some statistics on cold calling, because listen, I know it works, but I'm also wondering in today's age, is it still effective? And what I've found and what I've seen in practice is that it still works. If you know how, if you put in the work from a volume and repetitions perspective, you're calling enough people and making enough dials, and you aren't repeating the same bad behaviors you're learning from each call, you'll notice that with each rep, you get an improvement, and you'll see that your response rate will be higher. You'll see that you'll establish, whether it's the way in which you say it, how you open, the time of day in which you call, whatever your opener is, right? That connection moment. You'll see that there's ways where you could establish trust at the very beginning. And a lot of that is how you deliver it, right? And a lot of that is what it is that you're delivering. Is it relevant? And it's a very easy way to kind of pierce this, as I like to say, this bubble that people put around themselves, right? Email is cold. The humanity of the discussion doesn't come through in an email. It's easy for somebody to reject somebody in an email, ignore it, hit delete, right? But when you call, you have an ability to connect. And in that connection moment, you have this ability to, wherever it's about the product or whether it's about something that's happening in the world today, whatever that moment is, could be a joke that you use, you have this strange ability to humanize yourself and move yourself away from being a salesperson to being just another human who happens to just have a good idea. And if you have 5 minutes of your time, I'd love to share that with you. Right. So this is why it's an effective medium, because you're able to cut through all the noise. You're able to actually, next best thing to showing up and seeing someone face to face is hearing their voice, because it evokes and invokes rather these kind of feelings of, hey, like I'm dealing with a human being, right? I'm not dealing with AI, if you will. So the goals of today, kind of some of the things that I want to get through today, and again, you'll have this document to reference afterwards, is, what are the elements of this script, if you will? And there's no perfect script, right? There's an idea and a concept, but it's about repetitions and experimentation, really. Whenever I make cold calls, I never try the same approach. And maybe it's just me, but I actually, with each different cold call, I do the experimentation and I have a little bit of fun with it, right? Just to see what people are responding to, what people are getting upset about, right? What gets me in the door, a different way to have a separate conversation. All these are things that, while I know it's a business, I think it's important that you try, right? There's no one size fits all approach. Your goal in this session is just to kind of break through, break down the barrier, and establish some sort of baseline rapport to continue the conversation. The one last thing I'll say before we go to the next slide is, many people, and I talked about this in the last session, we're so focused on our agenda and our objective for that call, forgetting about who's on the other end, right? That we are not listening, we're just reloading. And oftentimes we go into these calls trying to get everything accomplished in that call. And in that process, we don't follow a normal conversational flow. We're not open to the rhythm of a conversation. And we're kind of brute force jamming down what we have to offer and why you should care. And while I know the whole point of calling is the fact that we are trying to sell a service, the reality of it is while it is all right, it does not have to be all right now. So many times your best effective cold calling opportunity is one where you walk away with just the promise to have a next conversation. And when that usually happens is when you're listening and picking up on the cues around you. So how that looks like in a conversation is, hey, Joe Johnson, this is Brandon Weaver, calling from Compass, wherever you're calling from. I have an interesting opportunity. Would love to share with you if now works for you. I realize that you're a working professional, might be busy, but what I have is I think you'll find really interesting. So you might find that someone is stressed by the pace in which they're saying, seems preoccupied. And just by your ability to recognize the fact that they might be a busy working professional, and you know what it's like to be a busy working professional and how important time and capacity is, you start to build a rapport behind the scenes that you probably don't even know, right? The empathy piece. By you saying, if now's not a good time, totally get it, right? And setting up another time to talk, you've gained credibility in that person's eyes. So that individual moves from this stance, and I tell people at our team at Voyage, moves from this, I'm fighting you like this with their fists up, which a lot of people are when you call them. You're disrupting something. You're interrupting my day with something that was not planned. And our goal is to move people from this stance to this, put their hands down. And that takes a lot of just situational awareness. And so when you guys engage in a cold call, get out ahead of things that you probably know might be true. Whether it's the time of day, if you call in the evening and dinner might be around the corner, mentioning that. If you call early in the morning, knowing that they might be on a commute to work or on their way to work. And as a working professional, you realize, right, what that means. Those things help to kind of soften the approach, humanize you, and get you in the door. So the psychology of a cold call, right? What are these elements that comprise it? And I talk a lot about kind of human behavior and psychology, but there's some things that are kind of just what you have to do, right? And you guys should all be familiar with this because like me, I could just imagine you guys get cold called also. And what's really interesting too is when I get cold called, I actually accept the cold call because I want to see if they're able to actually convince me and sell me on something and reflect on what they did that got me to actually care or to not hang up. Right? You can learn a lot by actually watching others cold call you and how they do it. But as we go through the anatomy of it, the first 10 seconds are critical, and this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Right? By being aware of what their state might be based on the time of day that you might be calling. And even if it's not that state, making mention of it that it could be, right? That's the respect. I respect your time. And making sure that one, that you establish why you're calling, right? And if it is an idea, if it's an opportunity, that's kind of the thing that gets somebody excited. So last week we talked about ways in which, a cold call could be effective. And, again, if we went through your network on LinkedIn, and let's just say it's not as cold as a cold call, but like you saw that there was a connection, you could easily start with, hey, Mr. Johnson, this is Brandon Weaver. I see we're actually connected through a mutual friend, right? Automatically goes from this to this, right? If it is as basic as a standard cold call, like basic cold outreach, you have a person's name and number and calling. Softening that approach, making yourself seem human and not another AI bot, right? Which are making the majority of the cold calls these days anyway. But it's that first 10 seconds that's critical, establishing who you are, essentially where you're calling from, and the fact that you have something that is worth their time, right? That is what you want to establish in the first 10 seconds. And a large part of this is, and this is kind of what I think has been a ingredient for my success. I'm not saying it's necessary, but it's certainly helped me, is the energy that you call it. So I think we talked about it last week in the session following the coaching session around, people want to feel as though, they're inspired, right? Or that they should care. And everybody's looking for, we think everyone's looking for a new opportunity. And if you approach a conversation where you're calling to introduce a new opportunity and you're not excited yourself, it's going to be tough to find the other person on the other end getting really excited. Right. So that's where the energy in which you present the thing which you're sharing, it could be the applying a scarcity tactic to it. Right. I'm hopping on the phone, telling people about this because this opportunity won't last a long time, which is why I wanted to get a hold of you. And it just could be creating the conditions that force them to care, bringing those forward, right? So, hey, I just was on the phone with another client, saw this interesting opportunity, immediately want to get a hold of you because I don't know how long this is going to last for. And I was able to help Ms. Johnson. So I figured, hey, let me reach out to everybody in the neighborhood and see if I could possibly get a hold of them to help their situation. You get whatever it is that you are presenting to them, having this, presenting this feeling of you have credibility, you've helped someone, you have something that's in demand, and that there's a time constraint. A lot of these things bring people to the table faster and make people care faster. The worst thing that I've seen on any cold call, and we've all been there, part of it is the discovery process, right? Where the person calling you doesn't seem really confident. They're asking basic questions that frankly they probably should already know before getting on the call. And it seems like it's going to get forever until they're trying to sell me on whatever it is they're selling me. Thematically, on the other end, you're thinking like, look, kid, I got to go. I'm really stressed. Someplace I need to be to. You're trying to find any way to get out of that call. Right. So it's very important to, when you do a cold call, to be really crisp, precise, concise with whatever information that you need. And at the very beginning, establish the reason for why you're calling and bringing that tension, right? The need for this call to happen now and for you to care, bringing that forward. So I want to pause here because I've been talking. I just want to make sure that, this is making sense to people as I go through this. It's one thing for me to say it, but it's another thing, whoops, for me to actually, hear it from you guys to make sure it's actually like, is this stuff resonating? Give me 1 second. Why is this not? Yeah, I tell you, technology is not on my side today. Give me 1 second, guys. There we go. All right. Let me present this. Um, so let's keep going. So we talked a little bit about the script structure, right? What are the elements of it? Some say it's formulaic. I actually don't follow a formula. The only piece to this that I really follow is the opener, right? Which is establishing who you are, right? Why you're calling, the value statement, right? The discovery question, I actually tend to think sometimes might annoy people, but I tend to not go to step 3 until I get a sense of that person's attitude on the other end, right? Whether or not they're open to this conversation, whether or not they're moving at a pace that would suggest that they don't really want to have this conversation right now. And what I do after establishing the value statement and getting their responses, either keep going with whatever it is that I'm trying to sell, or set up a time to talk, to follow up, right? Where we can talk about whatever it is, the thing and the opportunity that I think is so valuable for them. So at the outset, I talked about the ability to actually sit, deliver, listen, and then process what that person is saying and kind of sit in that moment and be human and then kind of direct what's the best path moving forward, I think is critical. Where I see people fail is when they're doing this, they're repeating the kind of same strategy, they're not listening to the person on the other end, and they're not mindful of what that person's saying, kind of like the words beneath the words, if you were, the feeling beneath the words. Right. So in your guys' seat, as you think about cold calling, the worst thing you could do is be inflexible in these discussions. I think the best attribute and best thing you can do when approaching a call is, one, making sure you have enough information prior to making that call, not to sound creepy, like I know about you, to the point of like something personal, but something that might be attention that might be either resonating with them, an opportunity that might be topical with them, right? The situational awareness of it all. And the opener might not be something that is, the value statement might not be something that is something you're immediately selling, but it could be a strong opener giving you space and then injecting maybe some sense of humor, some kind of situational awareness. And all you're doing is just carving out space for you to have a normal conversation, right? And to get the kind of the mutual respect, if you will. And it's hard, right? And when I tell you guys this, I almost make it sound as though every single call you'll be able to do this. The reality of it is that we know that's not the case, right? Like it is going to be difficult. You will face people who just hang up the phone, people who, whatever it may be, the list goes on and on. But I think the one takeaway here is you have to stick with kind of the basics of the process, right? And be open to where that conversation might go. And then the third thing, which we have not talked about, is whatever it is you're calling on, you got to be knowledgeable about, right? And you really have to know. So, you know, if you're calling on something and you don't have a high degree of product knowledge, it's unlikely that that person is going to move forward with whatever it is you're selling. So make sure that, obviously, and this is kind of brass tacks here, but when you do get that opportunity to share whatever that value statement is or that hook is, make sure you know it and know it well, and take the information that they might have shared, if you are able to ask some questions and get a better feel for them, and map it back to what they shared. Right? And what that looks like is, so I heard you say this, this, and this. And that's interesting because now's actually a great time because of what you might have said, right? Or it sounds like you're having it here. Oddly enough, like my product actually addresses this, right? So whatever it is that they have actually shared with you, right? If you're able to get that, always mapping back that solution, if you will, right? And that's just product market fit. And as we're having these calls, depending on if you get to the next call, which in many cases, this is what your kind of situation looks like as realtors, right? It is, I would love to have a next call to share more information with you, or I'd love to actually sit down and share more with you, right? Introduce who I am, tell you about how I run my business and my methodology, explain to you why now is a great time to take advantage of this opportunity, or how I work with buyers and sellers just like you, right? It is kind of this soft close, right? You want to sound like you're not domineering. You want to sound as though you run a business that adheres to hours, timelines, deadlines, just like their business. And if you do get the opportunity to set up another conversation, you want to make sure you always leave with a definitive next time to call back, a date on the calendar, a time on the calendar. And by doing that, you hold that other person accountable and improve your chances of when you do call at that time that they'll answer. Because no one wants to let somebody down, especially after taking that much time. So these are all like the little psychological kind of hacks that come. Now, understandably, you'll have objections that come along the way, right? And there's no like worse, like the thing that always annoys me the most is when I'm dealing with someone cold calling me, and it usually comes when I'm not prepared to have this conversation. I am trying to get to the next thing in my day, and I'm giving objections, and they're not listening and they're not picking up on it. It's like that's the annoying salesman, right? So when handling objections piece is critical. It's important not to get defensive. It's important to say things like, I hear you. If I understand you correctly, right? If I'm listening to what you're saying and thinking about what that means, right? All these things imply that I've heard you, right? I'm thinking and I'm diagnosing, and here's my recommendation. And this is extremely critical because a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people, when they hear an objection, they just wilt, right? They don't know how to respond. And they say the first thing that comes out of their mouth, right? And it's usually not elegant. It usually doesn't buy them enough time to really like reflect and think what's the best thing to say. So many times when you hear rejection, the first thing I do is in my mind, I buy myself time to think, right? And that is by saying things like, if I hear you correctly, or totally makes sense, right? And I say it in an approachable, soft way, right? And what I'm doing in my head is I'm thinking while I'm saying that. buying myself time. And people underestimate the value of that dramatic pause and what the pause actually affords you, right? As the cold caller. So everyone's thinking about this rapid fire back and forth, right? And I actually try to slow it down, do the pause, because it heightens your authority. Pause makes people kind of wait on what it is they have to say. It's called like a hanger, a cliffhanger, if you will, and establishes your one, your credibility on a call, but two, like your ability to control the call, the rhythm and tone of that call. And so while yes, there's things that you can say, these are all the psychological things happening underneath the conversation that get power back on your side of the aisle, that I've seen that have been effective. At least they have for me. And then when you experiment with these things, these are things that I think you should try to see if they actually work, right? Let's go to the next slide. We've talked about this. This is more of what I've been saying. Obviously, the conversation, we know that the conversations we have that we feel really good about, we know the ones that we don't. The ones that we feel really good about tend to be one where we feel like we've built a connection with someone, right? Where there's a likability established, right? Face to face, it's easy. We use usually how they look, how they approach us over the phone. It's the same thing, but in an auditory perspective, right? So the tone in which you use, right? Are you domineering or are you soft, right? Are you respectful of my time, right? Are you just trying to bully what it is that you want during this call, right? And you make it feel as though they're special, right? I brought this to you. I noticed something and I thought you'd be a perfect fit. All these things make it feel like, oh, wow, like this person, whether it's true or not, this person actually is thinking about me or is mindful of what's happening. And then just listen more than you speak. I think one of the things that we have seen and happens time and time again is, and it goes back to what I've been saying, it's let me push whatever my agenda is across, right? Once you're able to get that person to move from this stance to this, I found that what buys me a lot of equity and goodwill with people is letting them talk, right? Usually when they walk away from that conversation, they think more favorably about you. And it allows you to change the kind of shape of that, what that next call is like, and have you kind of break through a bit faster and more effectively. Lastly here, as we end, this is a slide I wanted to put together called like a toolkit. Right. So naturally, when people think about going out to cold call, there's probably going to be a bit of hesitation. They'll probably find every excuse not to do it. You know, I got to get my papers organized. I got to do this. All right. There should be a checklist that you have with you, right? Making sure you're kind of doing these things. We talk about optimal timing, the morning time block versus the evening. I always like the evening after people have decompressed. If you're like me, the mornings are hectic. I'm getting emails. I'm just trying to keep up. The last thing I need is somebody calling me about something I don't need, right? Let me get home, reflect on the day. I'm in a much more calming state of mind before I go to dinner and get distracted. To me, that's always been a better window. I always stand when I call. There's something about the confidence that I have, the fact that I can do something with my hands, move around. I'm just generally more creative standing up than speaking. And this is something that I do. I'm not saying that you guys should do it. Some people think I'm a little crazy, especially when I'm working from home and I'm wearing a full suit. People are like, well, who are you wearing the suit for? For me, this is about mentality, right? I go into every meeting, if I dress a certain way, treating that meeting a certain way. And if I'm actually calling individuals, cold calling, if I'm wearing sweatpants as opposed to I look like I'm actually doing what my profession is, I'm much more crisp and sharp. So something that I do, again, not for everybody, but mentally it gets me in the state of mind where I'm approaching it with a business type of mindset, and I'm very efficient with my call and very purposeful with each interaction. And then this goes back to last week, tracking every outcome, right? So like, what did this person say? Even if you didn't get a response, it just went to voicemail. That's actually something you should track also, right? Like it could be the time in which I'm calling is not ideal. So every single, whether it's you don't get a reaction to, you do get a reaction, track those, map it back to what did I say, right? What was the approach that I used this time, and see what actually is getting to closer to your desired result. Follow up is key. You guys all know this as realtors, right? People appreciate if you follow up, not just to say hello, but if you follow up with, hey, we talked about this. I'm sharing this with you based on what we talked about, or mapping out what a next step is and adhering to that next step, right? People value accountability and the fact that you actually see value in that. So make sure that that is a critical piece to it. Quality equipment, yes, right? You got to make sure you're heard, and that there's no kind of technical issues, if you will. And then the script variations. Like this is not a one size fits all approach, right? I think as much as there is variation, there's also experimentation and there's ad libbing in the moment. And if your ability to actually sit in that moment, not be so prescriptive and didactic and professorial, but actually have a normal conversation, if you see the opportunity to move it from a product one to I can build a relationship and then come back to the product, because here's an opportunity to establish a rapport. Now, if I layer on the product on top of it, I've built that trust with that person. To me, that's like the holy grail of cold calling. So if people were to listen to me in cold call, you might see, okay, the person's interested in the product. I actually might bring up something that injects a little bit of humor, or that, contextualizes something that's happening in the world today that we're both going through, right? Just to get them to laugh, just to get them to know the type of person I am, and then bring the product back on top of it. So it might slow that process down, but really you're building a more formidable, that relationship capital that's being built there. And obviously to staying hydrated, that's kind of like a funny one there. Like, but this is a gauntlet here, and getting rejected is never easy. It tends to make you more tired than give you energy. So just make sure that, when you approach it, that, one, you're blocking out an amount of time to do it. And, you're approaching it with as much energy as you possibly can, right? So make sure you eat beforehand, clearly stay hydrated beforehand. So I wanted to leave you guys with an action plan. We won't go through this now, but these are some takeaways here as to when I think about cold calling. What are the things that I should be thinking about, right? Again, setting aside time, right? It's a numbers game. How do I focus and target? What's working versus what's not working? And then the importance of following up with prospects. And that is it. I know we've gone 13 minutes over, but I know I started a little bit late. So I am going to take the presentation down. Right. Yeah. Having such difficulty here. All right. So let me we're now in this the post session here, and I'd love to kind of hear what the group feels about just the process of cold calling, some wins they've had, what's worked, what's not, how they go about doing it. Mike, I know you are someone who does this now and probably has some really good insights from the reps that you've had. I'd love to hear from you and really from the group, what they've seen that's worked, what they've seen that's not worked. Floor is open.
I think it is absolutely positively something that you have to be prepared for. It's when I think about doing it, I kind of get stressed out because I hate doing it, but I
Yep.
know how effective it is, and I know that really it's about consistency because everybody gives up so quick when it comes to doing this. They get on the phone, they get a whole bunch of rejection, they get panicky, they get stressed, and they don't really practice the scripts enough to have them internalized. So when you get on the phone, you're so nervous about what am I going to say next that you're not listening.
Yep.
Because if you're not listening to what they're saying, they will give you bits and pieces that you can work with. I record a lot of my sessions and I'll go back and listen to it and say, they just opened the door for me right there. And I just
Yep.
wasn't listening because I was so concerned about what am I going to say next and how am I going to handle that objection. And honestly, if they're going to talk to you, they're going to talk to you. I
Yeah.
I think that the first 15, 20 people who hang up on you or don't answer the phone or it goes to voicemail, you kind of get more stressed out. But after that first person who actually speaks to you, it's like you let out the
Yeah.
sigh and you go, oh my
It almost like
God.
pierces the anxiety bubble, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really does. And it makes you feel better about the next phone call. And I think that first conversation is so effective in the next couple of, if you can speak to them. And contacts are great, but those conversations and writing down the notes and listening to what you said is important, but you got to be ready for it. And you must practice what you're going to say. And you need to know all your objection handlers up front because they're all the same. They're
They're all the same.
I've heard the same objections for 25 years. I haven't heard one new one yet.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? We'll get into some of these questions in the meeting chat. But I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie 8 Mile with Eminem, but I thought that there was something in there that if you picked up on it, I use it all the time that has helped me, not just in cold calling, but just in interactions when I present to investors or anybody, which is getting out ahead of those objections that you know are going to come. So it's almost like neutralizing their potency. So they have actually nothing to object to, right? So if you know that, like, oh, yeah, like this is again, if you get the opportunity to do it, a lot of us don't. But you might even end up saying, many clients tell me, like, Brandon, but it's impossible. There's no inventory on the market, right? Which could be a common objection, like, oh, yeah, like, you know, there's no opportunity for me. I understand why you're calling, but like, realtors call me all the time. There's no inventory. You actually might have a solution for that, right? That you can actually, if you mention that ahead of time, knowing that that could be a complaint and already have a solution to address that, it just neutralizes the impact of that, right? If you didn't go ahead and actually get out ahead of that and they said it to you, you might get so hung up on the rejection that you start fumbling around, right? And then you lose that person. So when we talk about all these things, track your results, track those, the objections, the questions they might have. Because to your point, Mike, those will come again. Make sure you have the answers to those or something to neutralize those. And then again, experiment. You might do the reverse psychology approach. Like, who throws an object? How is the person calling me actually putting the objection out there? Right? It's so counterintuitive, but it actually gives you power in the conversation, right? And shows that like you're thinking and you already have a solution for what could be the most common objection. There's one other thing I didn't get to mention here because it's actually funny because we talk about cold calling, but there is the situation where nobody answers and you have to leave a voicemail. Now, I myself, I can't remember the last time I left a voicemail for somebody, right? I just usually text. But what's interesting is if you do get to the point where you want to leave a voicemail, if you are that person or, that's just what you want to do. One of the things that I've seen that has been really effective, and I don't know what it is, I think it's a psychological thing, is when you leave that voicemail to sound authoritative on that voicemail, not asking for permission. And what that means is words like, hey, Mike, this is Brandon calling from, and changing it to, Mike, this is Brandon calling from Compass. I got an interesting opportunity and I'd love to share it with you. Let me know if you have time to talk around 3 p.m. this afternoon. Just that simple shift from I got something that you like, I feel I got something that's of value to you And if you don't call me back, you might miss on it. As opposed to like, hey, Mike, I'd like to get just a little bit of your time just to share an interesting opportunity. Like, I'm never going to call that person back. And and you can see it when I say it. As I was saying it, I was like, yeah, if someone called me like that, I actually would be much more prone to call them back than if someone sounded like they were asking for my permission for whatever reason. And I don't know if that comes back like if we were a child and maybe that's how our parents were talking to us when they got upset with us about something. So we're like, oh man, I gotta, it's bringing something forward that I got to deal with. Whatever it is, our job is to not try to understand it. Just know that this is how human beings, this is the behavior and psychology around it all, and to actually take advantage of that and use it to our advantage. Let's go through some of these questions here. Have you tried, this is from Alex, have you tried pattern interruptions, disqualification at the beginning of the call? Like, this is a cold call. If you want to hang up now, no problem. Paraphrasing, more refined scripts, but that's the general idea. You know, I've seen people do this, Alex. I'm not necessarily a fan because it actually, in a way, either delegitimizes or makes me secondary in the conversation, right? So it almost like neutralizes the effect and impact of what it is I have by saying, this is a cold call. Like, yeah, they know it's a cold call. I don't even know who you are, right? Thanks for announcing it, right? And if I have that time, it's like I almost don't want to use that time to ask for permission. I'd rather use that time to reframe it and build this idea. I have something of value here because you got a few moments with them. I understand why you asked, right? Because just by asking for permission, there's the, hey, I respect your time. I think if you're going to go that route, I just think there's a better way to do it than if you want to hang up now. Like, yeah, I want to hang up now, right? Like, you're giving me permission to hang up now. Like, if you're giving me permission, I'll definitely take it, right? Thank you. You let me off the hook, right? That is how I feel. And I just think there's softer ways of doing it after you get through your initial kind of preamble, if you will, saying, hey, listen, I understand now it's not a good time. Things like that kind of get you to the same place, but don't delegitimize or diminish you in a call. Susan, if the caller doesn't introduce themselves first and last name, who they work for, I will hang up immediately. They start talking to me like I should know who they are and they're a good friend. I have no idea time for what they are selling. Yeah, I agree. They haven't established that rapport yet, right? That's why it's critical. I think we were saying this, that like you tell them who you are, make it clear who you're calling from, um, and why you're calling. I think those are the three things in those first 10 seconds you gotta establish. And it's a decision on them. They're gonna make the decision to either want to engage or not. Right. But I think if you're just immediately going in and being like, hey, Mike, it's Brandon Weaver, like, oh my God, can you believe the Ravens won the game today? Crazy. And like you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like who are you again? And why are you calling me? And it's a violation of your personal space. So that you're not gonna have a good feeling about that person. So yes. Diana, of course. I think it's critical that you guys have these slides because there's just stuff that you won't remember that you guys need to reflect on. So we'll make sure to get those slides to you. Regarding cold calling, do you buy a list or you go through online phone book lists that exist, i.e. where do you get numbers for cold calling? So I hate to do this, so here's going to be a shameless plug for my company because I'm in this space all day long, having conversation around where do people get actually lists? How do they get contact information? And there's a lot of different ways you can skin this cat, right? You can go to your title rep and get it. There's no shortage of lead gen prospecting companies that get you the data where you can actually, search individual properties, build a farm and pull back data. I think the one thing that is challenging is when you get information from people, is it scrubbed? Is it accurate? Right? Nothing worse than a dead lead or a non-relevant email or phone number. So platforms like mine, right, where you can actually define an area and pull back property records, owner contact information that's valuable, I think is critical. Um, so selfishly for me, when looking for, how do you find the people to dial? um, I'd say you guys should use Navigate for that. I think it's a great platform to do it. But again, there are other platforms that you can actually find leads and accurate contact information. Most of the people on our team have ended up using our title rep to get that information, but then you get it in a file format where like I got to organize it. I really don't have a lot of context, right? Like I just have the person's name, info, right? So it's kind of like you're doing a lot of that discovery work on the call, which might annoy the caller. For our platform, not only do you have rich consumer data, but you also have a ton of information on the property. So when you call, you can be really precise with the situation and scenario so you can move faster. So, but Lana, if you want to talk to me offline about that, I can kind of help point you in the right direction for that. I'd love to explore cold calling buyers who reach out from ads. I know what we're talking a good bit about calling sellers or cold calling buyers. Yeah. Kristen, if you're there, talk to me a little bit about
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I run ads for my listings, which ultimately generates buyer leads,
Yep.
like on Meta, right? And so I know that a lot of our conversation has kind of centered around list for sellers and their properties. So
Yeah.
just be curious about the conversation or the scripts around buyers and that sort of.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. If you're generating ads and you're getting buyer leads, there's some indication, if I'm hearing it right, there's some indication that they're interested because they filled out an intake form or something to
Mhm.
that effect,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so to me, that's not cold, right?
Oh,
That's
okay.
actually like if you're thinking about the pot on the stove, you've
Yeah.
turned on the heat,
Okay.
right?
I've
So
warmed them
for
up a
me,
little. Okay.
yeah, I mean, listen, you put out something there that they've responded to. In my scenario, I'm talking about this is you don't know me from anybody. I got an opportunity for you and I got to get you to care. In your
Yeah.
scenario, I put out something there, a feeler. You responded to it. You took the time. So for you, it's about qualification because
Okay.
now it's flipped.
Got
Now
it.
this is about instead of, hey, I'm asking for your time. Now it's Kristen, my time is valuable. Like I got to know, are you worth my time here? Because you run a
Right. Okay.
business.
Right. That
Right.
makes sense.
So yeah, so it could be as simple as like, oh, Mr. Johnson, I saw you called. You're interested in property 345 Main Street. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I can also tell you a little bit more about the property. But I always like to get to know my buyers. Talk to me a little bit about your situation, right? And please tell me everything. Don't tell me what you think I want to hear. I want to know about you, Mr. Johnson, right? Because the more I know about you, the more I can determine if it's the right fit for you, for where you are in your life right now, right? And your job is do you have a product that meets them where they're at, but also are running a business, and if you have a whole bunch of leads, you need to be very, very the word I'm looking for, exacting, right?
Mm-hmm.
With how you qualify these people, because your
Mm-hmm.
job at that point is I need to make sense of this list and get to however many that I think could be the best fit for this opportunity here. So
Got
yours is
it.
less cold call. Yours is more, I want to know what my qualification questions are.
Okay. So it's about me coming up with really good qualifying questions. Okay.
Yeah. So
Got
like
it.
almost, and it's crazy psychologically. Tell me why you think you're a good fit for this home.
Got you.
Right.
Okay.
And not in that tone, of course, right?
Right.
You're trying to
Right.
pick up a client, but your time is important. You want to make sure that they understand the scenario, right? Like I found I was talking to someone, my next door neighbor, and they were going through this process. And it was clear to me that she had no idea what qualifying for a loan was versus the home buying process.
Mhm.
Right. So when she was telling me about like, oh, I'm interested in this home, she's like, I talked to this person and they pulled my credit. And like, are you trying to get pre-qualified for like, and it was she didn't know. So I
She
had to
had no idea.
literally
Right.
dial it back and let's
Right.
decouple these things
Right.
and understand what is it that you're in search of, right? And then let's see if
Right.
you actually even qualify,
Right.
right? And I think one thing too, and I'll close here, is many times those buyers that come across, they may not be the right fit for what you're selling. But if you ask the right diagnostic question, right? Tell me about your situation. You could find that, yes, they're a family and they've outgrown their space,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're looking for something. Maybe this home at this price point is not right for you. There's some other options that you might have, or you can pick up that buyer and be like, hey, I can go search for you, right?
Right.
And you can find other inventory if you're not, you can always pivot that. And again, it's up to you whether or not it's worth it. But you can always turn that into a pipeline on the buyer side, right? It may
Right.
not be for the inventory that you have,
Right.
but they may qualify
But
for
it's
something
for
else. And
other
now you
things.
have,
Right.
exactly.
Okay. Good. Good
Is that
info. Thank you
helpful?
so much. Very helpful. Thank you.
Yep. Cassandra, I have a very specific list of owners that I like to cold call the preposition, but I can't find their numbers. So proposition problem, but I can't find their numbers anywhere. Is there a magic key? Cassandra, email me offline. There might be. I might have a solution for you. It looks like that was the last one.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I think one of the things Kristen asked you about, she's getting the buyer leads. I think now in the space we're working in now, after the antitrust lawsuits and having buyers call you, it is the best possible time to build value in their eyes when you speak to them. Because if you make them know that you're the expert and you're providing them with value and talking about the process and the flow of the transaction, it's so much easier to present them
Yeah.
with that broker agreement when they know that you're a pro and you're not. I think most buyers agents, and listen, I love all my peers in the business, but I think most buyers agents have no clue what they're doing, and they're doing it because they think it's easier. And now it's just as difficult as getting a seller to sign a contract, getting a buyer to sign that buyer's agreement. So you got to build value.
Mike, you hit the nail on the head, and thank you for this. So this is something that I have been preaching. So again, think about this. I'm an outsider. NAR comes in, changes the situation. All my realtors come to me. Brandon, what do I do? How much should I charge? How do I get these guys to sign an agreement? And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, well, they got to sign an agreement that tells them, like, I'm actually going to charge them. And I go, and the reason why it's crazy in my head, and they think it's, oh my God, it's such that conversation will be met with such friction, is because, Mike, they didn't do what you just talked about. I've found that a lot of my realtors, they don't want to bore people with the process. They don't want to illuminate all the things they do. They don't want to share that they have a methodology, right? Nobody wants to hear that. Well, if you're trying to get somebody to pay you for something, they need to know that you have a playbook, you have an approach, you're knowledgeable, right? And when you establish that, it makes furnishing that agreement so much easier, right? Because then now they associate you like every other professional they may deal with in their life that they actually have to pay, like an attorney or a doctor or anybody, right? The less we talk about what we do, we diminish our value in their eyes. Then we ask them to pay for something, and we have established, why should I pay you? What value you're just like everybody? Oh, no, I'm not. And let me explain to you why I'm not. See, I have a track record of transacting with clients, and we follow a strict process. And here's how I work with my buyers, right? And explaining that and coming from a place of confidence. Now, when you share that with them, I can guarantee you 9 times out of 10, there's always that one who's always going to want a nickel and dime, sure. But they feel as though I'm buying into a methodology, I'm buying into an approach that this person's established. I'm buying into something I feel confident in. Right? And for you want to get those agreements because, listen, I'm working on behalf of you, right? As soon as we sign an agreement, contracts go both ways, right? And here's what I commit to doing for you so that you know that you're getting value in this. And being confident in that approach, even if you're not, right? In those moments, it's you feel confident when you talk to someone who seems like the authority, that they've done it before, that they've had the reps, they have the track record and proof points. And even if you don't have it, because a lot of people are like, well, Brandon, I haven't transacted. That's fine. This is how I treat it because I've learned from the best. And I've seen that by following this process, this gets results. And you're in a results-driven business. So thank you, Mike, for sharing that, because I think that's critical, right? And Kristen, when we talk about those diagnostic, that beginning conversation, establishing yourself as an authority, establishing your methodology, making sure there's good product market fit, right? How do you determine if you're the right person for this opportunity, right? And if you're not, how do we find out? Is there something that you are a better fit for? And here's your approach to identifying that. I think all of that helps to establish your credibility at the outset. I want that solution too. No problems, Yolanda. Do you have a dialer you prefer? Mike, I know you mentioned you have a dialer on the last call. I'm going to email you offline because I'd love to hear what that is. Like,
Okay.
listen, I am talking, our platform, we're trying to implement a dialer solution, but everywhere I go, and this is why we're going slow with implementing it, is I hear that if you're dialing and you happen to hit somebody that's on the do not call list and they happen to, want to call in and report you, those fines, they're not pretty. And so I'm curious to know how your solution manages that and how it works. So I might hit you offline just to do some fact finding here. But certainly, if you guys want to reach out, email, physical mail, all those things, we can do it at scale for you guys on Navigate. And then Namita, for starters, when you have a new buyer, email them a buyer's guide, flip book, personalize it. Assets are in our marketing. Yeah. I think that's important. I just think the pacing of that is critical, right? You don't want to overload them at the very beginning. You got to establish that's part of your process first. And then obviously making sure your brand fits what it is you're selling. Namita, go ahead. Namita, I saw you raising your hand. All right.
What
I
I
answer it for. Oh,
Yes.
there you are.
that you can after you sorry, I don't know what's happening with my speaker, headphone. When you first meet the buyer at an open house, or if they've been referred to you, then you write your initial thank you card or email, and then say, this might help you till you get to that meeting when you are going to actually discuss get their criteria
Yeah.
and discuss the buyer broker agreement, BRBC.
Yep.
So that's
100%.
why this flip book is sort of nice.
Yeah, I agree. And sorry, the context there is really helpful. I was thinking about from a cold call perspective, but if you've established during an open house and you've gotten that person's information, had a conversation, certainly that next follow-up with
Right.
some branding, reminding them of who you are, reminding them of the infrastructure that you have, some opportunities, right? You are not just working with me, you're working with an enterprise that has real heft and legitimacy here, right? You got a team behind you. All those things fortify you and establish credibility. And I think all of that is right. So yes, I would certainly follow up after that interaction with something like that.
Mhm.
All right. I think we're over time. So I'm going to conclude here. I'll make sure that this presentation gets distributed to you guys so you guys have it. And I'm not sure if you guys have my email, but I'm gonna type it in the message board. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have questions on this stuff. Like I said, I can do a demo of our product for you if you're curious about Navigate. We will be going live to really all of Compass in June, on the 1st of June. So we're just working out some kinks on the background, but we're really excited about it. But I think from a cold calling perspective and reaching as many people as possible efficiently, not doing all the manual work that goes along with it, which is just, it's a pain. I think we're really a great solution. And funny enough, the reason why my partner Ari and I created it is literally watching people struggle with doing outbound outreach, right? The process of getting new leads. So we designed it to make it really simple for you guys. But if you have any questions, please email me. Thank you guys for the time. Sorry about the technical difficulty, but hopefully you guys found this session effective. And I look forward to talking to you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Take care.